We can learn a lot about survival right now based on what's happening overseas in the conflict. The people in that area are having to adapt to some pretty extreme conditions, and their power grid and critical infrastructure is under constant attack. So, how are they adapting to their current conditions? What is it they're doing to try to give their people some relief? Well, they've created these points of invincibility, and it's in conjunction with the government, but people are taking matters into their own hands as well and making these points of invincibility within their communities. And a point of invincibility is a generator powered warming center that's usually housed in like a military tent or some kind of other structure. And it's a gathering place for people to come get warm, charge their electronics, use some power, or even possibly have internet, and then go back to their dwellings once they have everything taken care of that they came there for. So these are all over Ukraine right now. The government officials have opened many of these POIs, or points of invincibility. And Kiev right now is operating 530 points of invincibility alone. So, why should preppers prepare for these points of invincibility and plan for them? Well, it's very easy to foresee a grid down or power grid failure type scenario here in the United States. Our critical infrastructure is under attack all the time. We know EMPs are a possibility, and CMEs can also happen, and they're a natural occurrence. So there's really nothing we can do about them. So if there was to be some sort of grid down situation, or if our infrastructure began to fail, we should expect to see these points of invincibility to show up here as well. And there are some reasons for why you would want to be involved with that planning, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, okay? Neighborhoods in Ukraine right now, communities are coming together and crowdfunding their own POIs. They're actually putting them together in the center of their developments, and they're setting them up just like the government is, with military-style tents, with generators, and with heat sources of some kind, and an internet if possible, and they're just trying to give their community a place to gather, get information, stay warm, and share intelligence, right? And I think that's going to be a big deal for anybody surviving an SHTF type scenario. Now, really quickly, I need to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. And of course, they have all kinds of military surplus stuff and all kinds of stuff related to staying warm, heaters like the one you see here, all kinds of stuff related to this. And this is the kind of stuff we should think about as preppers, not only for ourselves, but how we might need to be part of the planning when it comes to these POIs. So I just want to mention that, and thank you to Midway USA for doing what they do for me here, okay? Here's the thing. Expect emulation here in the United States if we have that kind of same scenario. Now, here's why you should get involved with planning POIs in your area if that was something that was going to happen. Because you should take that opportunity to put your input out there for where they should be located. Understand, if you're in a suburban environment, you're in the neighborhood, right? And things go bad for a certain amount of time and these POIs start to spring up, but maybe there's not enough of them. So your community comes together and says, hey, we need to put one of these together ourselves because we need somewhere to stay warm. We got to get our phones recharged, and we all don't have generators and stuff, so we need access to this stuff. Wouldn't you like to be able to put that place somewhere further away from your property, or somewhere that's not going to draw any more attention to what you have going on, especially if you're running generators or if you have heat or whatever else it might be? Some of these people are coming there just to be able to cook meals and bring them back home, or even just boil water and put it in thermoses and bring it back home. So understand that you should be involved in these things because you can strategically influence where they're located and what they can offer. And I think that's a big deal. And I think we often try to hide out in our own little area and stay private because we don't want people to know about what we do. But we also lose the ability to influence where those things are located or how they're operated in the process. And I think that could be a big deal considering the fact that I don't necessarily need one of those springing up right in front of my house, do you? Now, here's the other thing to keep in mind. They don't take a lot to put together. And this is something that you can literally plan for yourself, even if you wanted to plan for it just for you and your group. If you have a community or a MAG and you expect people to be coming to your property or to your home, and you don't necessarily know how you're going to get everybody in your living room or whatever it is, right? We can emulate these POIs as well to kind of have that idea already in place and to emulate what it is that they're for. So what do they require? Well, you need some kind of large structure, and generally it seems like these military tents are doing pretty well. You can get these military tents from surplus stores, and they're really big. They're basically like gigantic pop-up tents, but they're made out of hardened materials, so they'll actually last and, withhold when it comes to wind and everything else. And then we also would need generators, heaters, Stoves, all of this stuff is going to be either propane or other types of fuel, obviously. We're not trying to use electric stoves with electric generators if we don't have to. Things like these propane heaters are going to be very useful because you want to distribute the power as best you can between the different amounts of resources you have. And don't forget, you're going to need a ton of extension cords because if everybody wants to charge their phones or their electronics or whatever it is, it might be nice to have enough extra stuff to be able to do that so you don't have to spend extra time running generators and everything else just to get the same job done. So, this was something I just wanted to bring up because having stuff like portable propane heaters or having portable power units like this one you see right here that will allow people to recharge their stuff, including yourself obviously, and stay warm is always good to have. And then having that influence as to where these locations could pop up or having that influence as to how they should be operated might actually help protect you from being seen as someone who has all these things when it's something everybody apparently needs. And what will happen, in my opinion, is if you're in a tight-knit community, right, you're in a neighborhood of some kind, and a POI is required because people need to stay warm and get their stuff recharged, and then everyone finds out you have a generator with fuel and you have heaters and everything else, but none of the rest of the neighborhood does, guess what? You just became the POI. So maybe being involved with some of that planning gives you the ability to push those things further away from where you are, so that way you won't have to be worried about prying eyes when it comes to what you're doing within your own dwelling. And that's just my advice. These things are being used right now in Ukraine. People are really appreciative of them. The government's involved with it, of course, but because the government's involved, there aren't enough of them for the people, right? So the people are taking matters into their own hands, and you should expect the exact same thing to happen here in the United States as well. So if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments below. I mean, I don't think it's the worst idea, and I think these things are sensible, and it's something that you could easily foresee happening if we ever have a large-scale, long-term grid-down situation. But it could be problematic if you're the only guy on the block with a generator and people are wanting these POIs to exist, but they don't know where to get the resources for them from. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I appreciate y'all, and that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.